Hello and welcome to Paula Armstrong Ceramics. So for this video we're going to have a little bit of fun with pinch pots, and we're going to turn our pinch pots into flowers. So these are like little flower balls, and you can do lots of different kinds of designs, but for this one I'm going to show you how to do a flower, the leaves and some texture for the background. I hope you like it and I hope you have fun. Okay, so for doing these flower ball designs, you can obviously pick the type of flower that you want and the design that you want, how small you want the flowers, how big you want the flowers, and make them any kind of shape that you'd like. The tools I find useful are these wooden tools with the round ends. I like the one that's got quite a wide end, and also one with the narrow end, and then I have a potter's knife as well to help with the carving. The ball is obviously hollow. This is not a solid clay shape. You would have trouble doing this kind of size if you have to fire it through a kiln, so it's a hollow shape. If you're doing this with air drying clay or polymer clay or anything else, attempting with any other materials, then obviously those materials will dictate whether it's hollow or a solid ball. I know with air drying clay it can be a solid ball, but you do still have to be careful with cracking, and certainly the bigger you go, the more that can happen, because of the drying. The middle takes so much longer to dry than the outside, and it still shrinks a bit when it dries, so you've got to be a bit careful with it. Okay, so I'm going to start with the middle of the flower, and I'm going to start with a flower on the top in the middle. So I am just going to put in a circle. Now I'm not actually carving out, I'm pressing the clay back. So I'm putting a line basically into the surface of the ball. And this make up the center of my flower, and then I can run the tool around and just smooth away some of those marks. Okay, now my petals, this has left a very sharp edge on the edge of that, and my petals need to go into the center, so I don't want that edge, so I'm just gonna gently use the tool and get rid of that sharp edge so that it's now at a bit more of a 45-degree angle, and it looks more like it's coming from the center of the flower rather than not being attached like something stuck on around the outside, because there's a very obvious line. There we go. Okay. And just tidy a little bit. And you can see now I've got like a raised bubble in the middle there. I'm just going to smooth this out so that it's a rounded edge rather than a sharp edge, like so. And then I'm going to go in with my narrower tool and decide how many petals I want. I normally do 5. bit of a, like a star shape. And then whatever shape petals you want, just draw them in for each. If you want to be a little bit more precise, you can do a template and put it on top and put your marks in so that you know exactly where each of your petals are going, so they're all the same size. I don't mind them being different sizes, so I just do all this by eye. Right, I'm gonna press this edge here in a little bit more. It's still a little bit raised for me. There we go. So you can see my flower shape there. Now I've done quite a large flower. I'm just going to do the one on this with some leaves. But obviously if you do smaller flowers, you can do multiple flowers and leaves with them. And they can look really lovely. Daisies also work nicely with different petals. Obviously the more you do in terms of the carving, the more work it is for you, but they can look very, very pretty. And you've also noticed that I haven't actually carved, although I keep calling this carving, it's actually not. I'm pressing the clay in and moving it around rather than carving anything away. So now I've got the line down the side and I want to lift this petal edge here away a little bit. So I'm just going to take my tool and scoop it under the edge of that petal, following the line. So now I can lift that petal edge away. As you can see, I've done my ball quite thick to allow for this. So I think this is probably maybe between 8mm to a centimetre thick, so that I've got room to do this carving and pulling away and still leave things. You might actually go through, you might cut through. That's not necessarily a problem because we need a hole in our bowl. If it's going in the kiln, we can't leave it solid as it's going to explode because we've got air caught behind it. If you cut a hole through, then you don't need to worry about putting a hole in the bottom later because you know it's already there. So again, just following this line, scooping the tool underneath so that I can lift the edge of these petals away. Further under you separate the clay, the more petal can lift away. Okay. I'm going to make sure that the lines between the sides of the petals are all clear, and then I'm going to very gently use this tool to kind of put some movement into the petals. I am just pressing down, pulling out from the center. And the back of this tool is nice and rounded. Okay. So we now have our flower like that. Some of this is going to need a bit of neatening off, but it's a bit sticky at the minute, so I'm going to let it dry a little bit before I go in and tidy all of this off. You can gently, if you can get your fingers and thumbs underneath, pinch the ends of the petals, the edges, just to make them a little bit thinner looking. And you can curve them and shape them if you want at this point as well. This will also give you room to see underneath here, because we need to go in and tidy underneath the petals, because this is where we're going to put our leaves. They're going to come out from behind the petals. It's a good idea to keep in mind as you're doing this kind of carving work, the layers. So what is in front of what and what needs to go behind, so it's half hidden. And then anything that's behind you press deeper into the clay, and anything that's in front you bring forward. So you can leave a nice smooth center if you want, or you can add some texture into this. I will quite often just put dots in on the center. Just to add a bit of detail and interest. But equally, if you're intending to use really pretty glazes and you want to do some colour variations in the centre here, you may not need any texture or detail. It might be better to leave it plain so that you can really play with your colours. So we have our flower like that. So my next job is to put some leaves in behind this, and I'm going to do the leaves the same way as I did the petals. So I'm just going to mark a very simple leaf shape all the way around, generally so that the leaves are not completely in line with the petals. They don't have to follow, like you don't need, if you've got 5 petals, you don't need to have 5 leaves, but somehow I quite often end up with that. And they also don't need to all be the same size. So I've got my leaf shapes, and I'm now going to put kind of lines in very simply, as if they were veins in the leaves. And for each of them. Like that. And then again, I want to push back the background. So that it's not just a line, but an edge for the leaves. Thanks for watching this video. If you're enjoying what you're watching, please hit the subscribe and like buttons, as that would help me out greatly. If you'd like to see notifications of my videos as soon as they come up, then please click the bell button. This should lift the leaves out of the background a little bit. See, we've got the leaf shape now behind the flower. This underneath the petals here is really going to need tidying if we leave them up high like that. So we could just drop some of these down a little bit like that to cover up some of that, and then just go in when it's dried off a little bit with a damp paintbrush, just to finish those off and tidy it up. I can just smooth all of these petals. Now this background part, it's up to you. You could add more leaves in if you wanted to. You can leave it plain. Or you can add a texture. I quite like matching the centre of the flower texture in here, so I do a bunch of dots all for the background. Obviously it's got to sit on the bottom, so I'm not going to worry about covering the bottom. I'm just going to fill in between all of these leaves. A bit of drying and final tidying up with a damp paintbrush, and then hole. Don't forget to cut your hole out of the bottom so that we don't have anything exploding in the kiln. And that is our flower ball. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed that, and it's fabulous fun, and like I say, you can have great fun doing different designs with different kinds of flowers and different patterns and sizes and textures. Once you come to glazing, it's also fun because you can start mixing glazes and blending colours. You can use underglazes or oxides. You can really have a play with these. I think they're great for beginners because they're reasonably quick, but you get a real feel for the clay. You start to learn when it's at the right kind of moisture point to be doing certain things, as well as how to judge thickness for things. It's about tidying and carving and thinking about layers within the clay, so you get kind of 3D thinking going on as well. So they're great beginners ones. They don't take too long, so you're not too precious over them, so you're a bit happy to play with when you're doing, particularly with the glazes and that at the end as well. So yeah, I think they're fabulous fun, and I hope you enjoyed it and enjoy making your own. And I will see you again for the next video. Bye.